I think it will change the world of short-term rentals dramatically because AI isn't currently utilized to drive demand. Next marathon for Hostaway, I think it will be all related to AI. I think we're going to be the one to crack this game and see what AI can do for property managers, and we're experimenting a lot right now.
How does running a marathon help you run $1 billion business? What is the simplest way to improve your guest experience? And how is AI going to transform the short-term rentals industry? Marcus Rader from Hostaway is the special guest on the Host Planet podcast, and he'll be answering all these questions and more on today's show. Marcus, thank you for joining us on the Host Planet podcast. Firstly, congratulations to you and Hostaway. You recently announced a valuation of $1 billion, which makes you the first property management software unicorn in the short-term rentals industry. I want to know, how do you frame this valuation in your mind when you think back to when Hostaway started 10 years ago?
I think it's insane. We had just 2 years ago, we had an employee who said, "You know what? We keep doing like this, we're going to be a unicorn." And I thought, no, that's not going to happen. And now, yeah, beginning of this year, we raised some capital at a valuation of 925. So it's not that big of a stretch to go to from 925 to 1,000. But it's still being the first one is something that's really unique. And also looking at the time scale of things. Well, now with AI, things have shifted. So basically, companies are getting no funding at all, except a couple ones. I met a Swedish law firm software using AI. They are less than a year old, and their valuation is 1.8 billion.
Is this beyond your wildest dreams?
Yes, it is. This is a bit crazy, but it's really fun. It's really, because you get, as the company is growing so fast, you get to learn new things every day, and that's I was never a good employee, mostly because once I got good at something, then I had to keep doing it, and I got super bored. But here, whenever I get good at something, then the skills are unnecessary the next week because we've grown so much, and so you're always playing catch up. And that goes for, we have 300 employees now. That goes for everyone. Whatever we're doing now, we need to figure out how to do it. But the moment that we figure out how to do it, we need to move on to the next thing, which is something that nobody knows how to do. And that's the way it is all the time.
Pace of change is incredible. When I saw you in Rome recently at the Vacation Rental World Summit, you told me about your marathon, your running exploits. Tell us the story of this, because I'm keen to know how preparing for a marathon and running a marathon has helped your business.
So there's a lot of founders who come to me and ask for advice with setting up a business, and I often, well, I ask a few questions. I usually don't care too much about their idea, but more of the industry that they're in. And eventually, I try to convince them that don't do it. It's not worth it. The reason I say that is that it's nice to be successful, and it's very nice to have a success story, and people look up to that and they find it inspirational. But it's a massive personal toll that takes. If you really want to succeed, you need to work in a way so that you prioritize work above everything else. And there's many things that you don't even notice, but other people around you, they're doing it. For example, for me, it was a wake up call when I didn't have time to. I was so busy building my business that I didn't realize that other people, what they're doing instead is they're going to the dentist on a regular basis. So I had 17 cavities when I finally went to the dentist. And it took over 2 years to fix. And now my teeth are going to be an endless drain for the rest of my life because of that. That's just one example. Another one was my health. I didn't have the time to notice that other people around me, they were exercising, And I wasn't, because I was glued to a computer and a phone and meetings and conferences and pitching and recruiting and firing and reporting to investors and getting the product built. Uh, so I didn't have time to do that. And at some point I said, this has got to stop. And I started thinking about exercise. At the same time, I found out my mom has Alzheimer's, and that's genetical. So I thought, I did some research, and it turns out exercise is something that's pretty good for, if your genetics are not the optimal, you can compensate by exercise. But what I found out was that starting to exercise is incredibly hard, because, at least for me, I was fat, I was overweight. And it's pretty much the same thing when you start a business. It's incredibly hard, because if you've been an employee, that's great. Many people who start a business have never been an employee. But if you've been an employee, there's a lot of things around you that are just there. And you never knew they were there, because you always assumed they were there. A bit like when you're at home, you go to the tap and you turn on the water, and you turn on the tap and there's water coming out. It's magic. But you just assume it's there, because every home you ever lived in, you turn on the tap and there's water coming out. When you start your own business, it's nothing like that. There isn't even a tap. There isn't even a kitchen. Like this, you get thirsty, there's no water. And that's what starting to exercise was like for me as well. I just couldn't do it. So first I had to figure out how to lose weight. But I thought this was an interesting challenge, because building a unicorn is incredibly difficult. But I know for a fact that other people have done it, and I know for a fact that other people have lost weight. So I found this method called calories in, calories out. It's a bit like your bank account. Money comes in, money comes out, and if at the end of the day or the month you spent less than you got in, then you have more. It's the same thing with calories. If you spend more than you take in, then you lose weight. So I followed that, and it was perfect, because I didn't have to go on any diet. I got to eat pizza, chocolate, ice cream, and I managed to lose 40 kilos or 70 pounds in 6 months. What I found out during that process was that I really enjoyed running, which is something I always hated, probably because I was overweight. And I thought, well, running is cool, but how do you supercharge it? What's like a difficult run? And I found out marathons are difficult. So I started studying that again. I like studying things, and turns out marathon is incredibly hard, because if you just try to run, first of all, you're not going to get to the finish line. Second of all, you're going to get injured, possibly for life. So it's a bit of an extreme sport. So I decided to try it, and it took 6 months of practice. And I remember reading that you have to run, what's it, 300 kilometers in a month. So on average, 10K or 6 miles per day on average. But you got to have rest days, otherwise you'll get injured. So you got to actually do longer runs than that. So it was in May last year, 24, when I decided to do exactly that, and I did it. And then 2 months later, I ran my first marathon, and it worked. Uh, but then I thought, okay, how do I supercharge that? Because that was exciting. But then I figured out I can do 100 marathons in 100 different cities. And if I finish with that before I die, then I'm going to donate 100,000 to Alzheimer's research. So that's a journey that I'm on. And actually, I did have an injury in October here, so I couldn't run for a bit. But just 3 days ago, on Friday, I ran my 11th marathon. And I see this as a percentage. I think whatever you're going to do, the goal should be to get there 100%. But getting the 1%, if you can measure that, that's the most difficult part. The second most difficult is getting to 10%. If you can get to 10% of your goal, the other 90% is about the same effort. It's really, because when you do it the first time, if it doesn't kill you, it's going to make you stronger. But when you've done it 10 times over, you're going to be able to do it 9 times that, and you're done. You've done 100%. And that's the way I see it. That's why I like the round number of 100 marathons. The challenge is probably going to be logistics. How do I find enough cities to run it?
Incredible, yeah, and a few things stuck out there, and a brilliant goal. 100 marathons in 100 cities, and raising money for Alzheimer's research as well. Okay, real talk now for all you hosts out there. You know that moment when your guest messages you again with, "Hey, what's the Wi-Fi code?" Or you're staring at 5 different calendars, wondering if you've accidentally double booked the cottage. Yes. We've all been there. That's why here at Host Planet, we recommend Hostfully. It's basically your rentals control center. It handles bookings across all the big platforms, syncs your calendars to ensure there are no double bookings, automates guest messages, and even creates these really slick digital guidebooks that stop all the repeat questions. Honestly, it just makes your life easier and keeps your guests happier, helping you achieve those all-important 5-star reviews. And here is a little bonus. If you're a Host Planet listener, you can get $500 off onboarding for Hostfully's property management software and 30% off digital guidebooks for life. Just hit the link in the show notes and use the codes PLANET500 for the PMS and HostPlanetGB for the guidebooks. And if you'd like a proper walkthrough, there's also a link to book a demo with Frank Bosey from Hostfully. He will show you how it all works. Less stress, more bookings, sorted with Hostfully. A few things stuck out there, especially starting a business. Nobody tells you about the Founders 15. I read about this in Mark Randolph, who set up Netflix book. He said the Founders 15, basically, because you're stuck behind a desk all day, you're on your laptop, you're trying to build a business, you don't do any exercise, you eat rubbish all the time, and you put on 15 pounds or sometimes even more. And then that bit where you said, the tap isn't there anymore, and there isn't even a kitchen anymore. Forget about that. I remember when I started my business, one of the things I thought about was I was invited to a conference, and I thought to myself, I don't know if I can go. I'll have to apply for leave. And then I thought, hang on a minute. I'm basically applying to myself. I can approve myself to go on a trip now. That's all fine. It does take a bit of getting used to. So, I mean, we hear with marathon runners that they have hit the wall moments. So I'm interested, what's been the equivalent hit the wall moment that you might have had with Hostaway, and how did you overcome it?
There's thousands of those moments. It's when you know you got the best solution out there for, not for everyone, but for a specific type of customer. And then you get on a call with the customer and they highlight how much you suck, even though you're the most commonly used software and you have tens of thousands of happy customers. It can still be a terrible experience for one customer. That's just really, it's really humbling. And it's important to remember also that if a business, it's very, I see a lot of idealistic founders who just want to get a customer and keep them happy, and then get another customer and keep them happy. That's all great for a lifestyle business, but once you scale, you're eventually going to reach a point where you just can't keep customers happy. You can't talk to everyone. I mean, if you got 100,000 customers, how many seconds are there in a year? How many seconds can you spend with each customer? You can't. That's just not if you want to run a business. And there's also the hard lessons learned with employees. When you spend 6 months recruiting someone and then finally find the dream candidate, and you sign the agreement, and then you tell everyone else, sorry, we found someone else who's better than you. Good luck, thanks. And then just 2 days before they start, it turns out that they had an accident or something happened, and they don't start, or someone who starts and then leaves for various reasons, or someone who you really know is going to perform and doesn't perform. There's always these very, very humbling moments in business, and it's important to have them, because the flip side of the coin is, if you don't have them, you won't be prepared for what's to come. And that's what I see a lot of businesses, they avoid mistakes sometimes by, they have great mentors, they have luck, timing can help you avoid mistakes a lot. But then when things start going bad, they don't have any muscles at all, and they don't know what to do about it. And so it's very healthy to have a certain amount of pain all the time.
Great advice. I mean, during a marathon as well, you've got to pace yourself. How do you think about pace for Hostaway now that you've reached unicorn status, and what happens next? What's the next big goal?
Yeah, there's a lot of parallels there. I'd say the biggest challenge as a founder, Brian Chesky from Airbnb, from our industry, he talks about founder mode. It means that a founder of business has an ability to do things in a certain way that's just simply better than anyone else because they have shaped the business around how they see the world and how they see the industry. But it can be quite intense for especially new employees who are not used to that. Maybe employees who have never worked with founders before, because a lot of businesses don't have a founder working in the business, or maybe they do, but not in the part of business that you work in. So trying to make sure you don't put too much pressure on teams and individuals that can really break things fast. And also, it's just so strange how I don't think any company does this well. But when they make a mistake, everyone critiques them. So either you come out, you don't do anything, and you become old and irrelevant. That sometimes happens. Or you do things, you release new functionality. And sometimes you release something that's not really tested, and you don't really know if the customers want it, but you built it overnight and think this is cool, so let's just release it. And then it becomes a massive success. And sometimes you spend 6 months interviewing customers, doing research, building it perfect, and you release it, and it's a giant fail. Most of the things go somewhere in between, but it's just so unpredictable. And I think the only way you can really make sure that you don't have those big failures, they can break a company if you do the wrong thing. Especially on the consumer side, you see, big brands come out with an ad campaign that's very unpopular, and suddenly their sales tank. It can happen to anyone, and it's not like that. I mean, they did research. They don't just release an ad that's going to break their business. That would be stupid. But yeah, the only way you can avoid that is by slowing down the speed of development or speed of releases. But then you might become stagnant. So it's a very double-edged sword.
Yeah, it's difficult. I mean, it's similar with content production. Sometimes you will spend ages producing something which you think is brilliant and valuable, and everybody and his wife are going to download it and be interested in reading it, and it does okay. And then other times you throw up some content and wow, gets so much engagement. Everybody wants a piece of it. It's sometimes we're just at the mercy of how people think, and it's difficult to know, and sometimes at the mercy of algorithms and all the rest of it. Your short-term rental business is evolving fast, but how do you keep up with the latest regulation, tax changes, and industry trends? The answer is to attend the House Planet Roadshow, which is coming to a city near you in 2026. This is the UK's premier event for holiday let professionals, supported by the Short-Term Accommodation Association, Price Labs, and the Women in Short-Term Rentals community. This is your essential opportunity for learning, networking, and expert insight. Starting in Cornwall on the 5th of February, you'll spend a full day mastering compliance, optimizing your revenue strategies, and sharing lessons learned with your peers. After Cornwall, we'll be in Portsmouth on the 4th of March and London on the 23rd of April. That's the day after the Short Stay Summit. Later in the year, we'll be heading to Nottingham, Bath, Chester, and Edinburgh. So don't navigate the complex 2026 market alone. Learn from the leaders driving the industry forward and shape the short-term rental conversation in your market. Tickets are just £40 each and available now from our website. Head to houseplanet.club for further details. In terms of the PMS space and where it stands right now, how do you think it's going to develop over the next few years?
It's going to develop the very same way that it has been developing for at least the last 5 years. There's a lot of consolidation going on, a lot of smaller solutions, whether they're point solutions or localized PMSs or channel managers. They're going to get acquired by PMSs, or in some case, do roll-ups, and that's going to continue. And we're very actively pursuing all the opportunities we can find. But yeah, we're going to. This is actually a really good thing for most property managers, because there has been in the last 10 years so much new technology coming out all the time, and you don't know what to use. And now we're going more towards a stage where there's a couple of big established players that have all the functionality that's needed, and whenever something new comes out, you don't need to go around looking for it, because these players are fast enough to adopt. So we're and that also means you as a property manager get to save a lot of time, because you don't need to play around with things that find out what works. Because in the end, it's a hospitality business. Your success as a business depends on the guest experience. It depends on the type of real estate you have access to, and how well you can match those two together. Can you have good real estate that give a good experience to the guests? Then you're going to have a good business. There's no technology really that can prevent that. I mean, for example, if you're real estate in a place where the weather is bad and people go on vacation, they want good weather, but your real estate is in bad weather, there's no software on the planet, and AI is not going to be able to change that. So yeah, that's what's up for the PMS space.
Sounds good. So Hostaway's growth really tied to, very closely to automation and AI. Where are you doubling down on product development over the next 2 to 3 years to really move the needle for your property managers?
Right now, we're doing three major topics. One of them is AI, obviously. That doesn't just mean functionality within the software. It also means in the background. We do a lot of testing and optimization of the listing, of the advertising, the guest experience as well, to help our customers become successful. One of our company's values is our customer success is our success. So that's how we think about AI. What is it that AI can help our customers be more successful with? Sometimes it's adding a new feature into our product, but sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's helping out the customers, but on a massive scale with hundreds of thousands of properties. How about we make each one of them 1% better? That's what AI can do. The other one that we're focusing a lot on is making the usability better. We have a very extensive, in-depth software that has a lot of functionality, but finding out what it can and cannot do can be sometimes cumbersome. That's why we have a massive customer success team to help our customers utilize the software, make their business better. But we have a dedicated focus on making sure the user experience is a lot better with the software. And the third one is localization, because being a property manager is a very local business, and we have recently expanded into a lot of markets. And as an example of that, we translated software, translated the website. We hired sales, onboarding, support, customer success in those local markets, for example, in France, Spain, Italy, UK, Australia, Mexico, and so on. But what these property managers really need is sometimes specific solutions for their market. So, for example, in Italy, if you're a nationwide chain, you need to report to about 300 different authorities on who is staying. And that can be a nightmare. It's not a nightmare if you got one property in one location, then you can do it manually and you got one guest a week. But if you have hundreds of properties across multiple locations, that's one example. So very much localization here.
Let's look at the industry more generally then. In your unicorn announcement, you said that you think the industry is set to double in size. What do you think that looks like in practice?
In practice, it's a simple math formula. So we are part of the accommodation industry, and the accommodation industry is basically people who are looking for a place to stay. And that one is growing. There's some trends, like COVID can change that, but overall, it's business and pleasure travelers who travel. And to some extent they travel longer as well, like digital nomads can stay a month or 6 months somewhere. But that's the entire accommodation space. That one is growing at a very rapid rate year over year, and there's no real signs that travel would stop. I mean, what we're seeing in the US right now, for example, is that there's fewer international visitors coming in. But at the same time, we're seeing, compared to 2019 data, that there's 20% more travel out of the US than there was before. So if you look globally at the whole accommodation, even if one market is not doing so great, it's still contributing an overall positive to the entire global accommodation market. But then if we start looking at short-term rentals and occasional rentals, 10 years ago, they represented 4% of that total massive pie. Today, they represent 15%. And there's no sign that that percentage is going to go down. There is no indication that consumers actively are choosing to stay in hotels instead of vacation homes.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see further growth. Industry more widely, then, what frustrates you the most about the STR industry, and what would you change if you could?
Honestly, a lot of the frustrations have solved themselves over the years. One of my frustrations, of course, I'm biased because my job is selling software, but I met a lot of property managers over the years who have said, "Oh yeah, but we're different because we're building our own software and it's going to be better." The nice thing with those is I always told them that, look, before you go bankrupt, please reach out. They never do because they don't like. But the nice thing is all of them are bankrupt now. Sonder is bankrupt. Everyone who tried Vacasa failed. Uh, Everyone who has tried to build their own software at scale have gone bankrupt or been acquired for pennies on the dollar. So that's really nice for us, because it, I, for me, it was a massive frustration that people were like, let's say I'm a farmer, I want to grow apples. There's two things I can do to start to grow apples. One is I can plant an apple tree, or maybe buy a seedling and plant it and start waiting for the apples. Or I can figure out, how do I build a tractor from scratch? Which one makes more sense? To me, it makes more sense to plant the apple tree and then see, are the apples good? But some people, they don't think about that. They think about, oh, I need to build my own tractor. I know that there's companies out there who have hundreds of years of experience in building the best tractor on the planet, and I could just buy one of those. But no, I'm going to build my own tractor. And that's why they always fail, because at some point, someone's going to come and ask, where are the apples? And all they can say is, well, I built 0.37% of the perfect tractor.
New year, then, New Year resolutions 2026. How do you think hosts and property managers can prosper in 2026? What would your top piece of advice be to somebody who says, Marcus, I've got a few properties, I want to grow my business. How should I do it?
Focus on the basics. Keep the guests happy. Keep the property owners happy. If you're managing other people's properties, I've been traveling a lot this year, and as every year, that's my hobby, and I often, I had a revelation. It was a few years ago. There was the VRMA Spring Forum in New Orleans, and it was completely dead. There was nobody there, so we didn't have much to do. But we had a massive team there, and we had a good party. But I went walking around the conference center, and the conference center in New Orleans is actually 3 different halls that are identical. So I went to the next one, and there was the American Wood Floor Association. They had their annual trade show. And I just thought about it for a while. When I meet new people, or when you go on a date, I don't date, I've been married for 20 years, and you ask people, what do you enjoy? What's your passion? I've never met a person who goes and says, my greatest passion is wooden floors. However, I met a lot of people who say, my greatest passion is travel. So we are very fortunate to be in the travel industry, and that's something that property managers should remember, that we are working in a place that is very close to passion, and it's very similar to restaurants because working in a restaurant is not a glamorous job, but there's many people drawn to it because they're passionate about food. And we have this one thing going for us, which is travel. It happens to be something that a lot of people are passionate about. So make sure that your guests have a good experience and read those reviews. If you're not at 4.9 on Airbnb, you're doing something wrong. And you need to find out what it is because it's not going to last.
What is your number one guest experience tip to hosts out there who want to provide a better guest experience?
It's so simple. It's incredibly simple. Just go and stay one night. Just go and stay. Read the instructions on how to find the key or how to do the check-in, and then bring a suitcase, pack for a week, and then start unpacking it. I recently went to Malta and I rented a place where we didn't have any adapters because we didn't realize Malta is an EU country, it's in Europe. We didn't realize that they use British electricity plugs. And that meant our chargers didn't work, nothing worked. But what was even more strange was that the TV and the toaster, they both had European plugs, but you couldn't plug them in anywhere because the walls had British outlets. And that was just one out of hundreds of examples. But yeah, please go and stay in your own property. When at night, when you lay down at bed, you'll figure out exactly what's wrong. Or same place in Malta, the curtain was broken. So you couldn't close it, which wasn't a big deal because it was quite dark at night. The big deal, though, was that was the curtain in the master bedroom, and the window was exactly where the sun went up at 5 a.m. So at 5 a.m., you have direct sun shining straight into your eyes, which is something that tells me that the property manager or the owner has not stayed here ever. Because if they had, they would have woken up at 5 a.m., and that's not nice if you're traveling.
Great tip. Stay at your rental. Understand the guest experience that you are actually delivering. What if somebody comes to you and says, Marcus, I really need to get my property on the first page of Airbnb. How do I do it?
I would ask why. You got three metrics that matters. One of them is ADR. That's the average daily rate. That one you should look at from the perspective of what else could this money buy. So if you're renting out a place and you're making 200 per rented night, then what else do you get for 200? What kind of hotel do you get for 200? What about the other Airbnbs? What do they make? The other thing you got to play around with is occupancy rate. That means out of 31 days in a month, how many days are rented out? And when you multiply those two together, you get RevPAR, which is revenue per available room. That's a term from the hotel industry. That's why it's per available room and not house or home. But I would say, which of these three metrics are you trying to improve? Because those are very different. And for example, ADR is a very relevant metric when you want a property to make more money than everyone else. Let's say it's a certain type of property, like a 3-bedroom house, and everyone else is renting for 200. There are things you can do to increase that to 300 a night. But it might require substantial investments and sacrifices to get to that. But still, is that what you're trying to do? That may or may not result in you ending up on the first page of Airbnb. So I would just start with, what is the problem you're trying to solve? Now, if your occupancy is already at 95%, then you're asking the wrong question. Because then you don't need more bookings. What you need to figure out is, what could you do to improve your business? My guess would be increase your prices. Because if you're renting out 95%, there's not much left for those expensive last minute bookings or event time bookings.
100%. Yeah. If you're at 95% or above, yeah, charge more. You're probably too cheap. In terms of AI, I mean, how do you think property managers should be utilizing AI? And then follow up after that will be, how do you think AI is going to upend our industry?
Well, a lot of the challenges that property managers have to face day to day are not actually related to automations or software. They're actually related to very physical things, and AI can be incredibly helpful. Um, so, for example, let's say you're taking over a new property and you find out that things are not working, or you want to do a house manual. Like, how do you turn on the shower? How do you turn on the TV? How does the fridge work? How does the dishwasher work? Just take a picture of it, send it to Gemini or ChatGPT. We'll tell you exactly how it works. And it's when something is broken, ask what are the different type of options I can fix. Because the default is always, oh yeah, let's replace it. And then that's expensive. It takes a long time. And if you got guest booked, it's not nice to hear, oh yeah, the dishwasher's broken, but we'll get one in 2 weeks. So sorry, you're only staying 10 days. That's not what you want to hear, but it might be a little trick. So that's where I say start with that. Any situation that you come up with before, oh no, there's no hot water again. We'll call in the hot water experts, whatever they're called. Yeah, but instead of doing what you normally do, go and ask an AI model. Sometimes they're terribly wrong. Don't follow their advice, but sometimes they come up with ideas that you never thought of. You might have been doing it the hard way, and there might actually be an easy way. So right now we're at the stage where this type of expertise is getting really, really good on the LLMs. So start using those. Or if you're recruiting or you have a management decision to make, ask it, how should I, what are the pros and cons of this decision?
100%, 100%. Yeah, just use it, just try it out, ask it some questions. And where do you think AI is going to lead this industry? And I mean, maybe the world generally. How are things going to change over the next few years, do you think?
I think it will change the world of short-term rentals dramatically because AI isn't currently utilized to drive demand. Basically, all the models today, they reinforce what you already believe, which is a bit bad because you end up living in a bubble. If you ask it for stuff, hey, can you recommend a restaurant? Eventually, we'll just recommend restaurants that it thinks are good for you, but not necessarily restaurants that everyone else thinks are good. And you want actually restaurants that other people also think are good. But it will move in that direction where it starts actually recommending things. And as consumers, that's sometimes what we want. Sometimes we have a problem like, hey, there's a TV missing. I want the TV. Which TV should I buy? And the solution is probably to buy a certain TV. That's a very tangible solution. But AI will start solving these problems at an increasing rate. What that means for making travel plans is that consumers will get used to the idea that they want to ask specifically what is the best Airbnb I can find in this location for that week. I don't think that's how it's going to work. Instead, there will be people who say, hey, here's our family. Our plans for the summer are that we're going to spend 2 weeks in some location that's within a 6-hour flight. Now, here's 3 holidays that we did enjoy from before, and then list those. And here's 2 holidays that we didn't enjoy, and here are the reasons. What's a new location we can go to, and what would guarantee that we have a good experience? And when people start asking questions like that, and they already are today, because they know if they ask, should I go to Sardinia? Then every AI model will say, yeah, you will have a great time. Because AI always says that. I mean, if you ask it for fitness advice, hey, if I do this, will I lose weight? Like if I walk more steps, it will always tell you yes. It will tell you exactly what you want to hear. But if you ask, okay, where should I go on a family vacation? That's when we'll start seeing a difference. So social media is a good example where suddenly small places like Santorini in Greece suddenly got massively popular. And I think that's exactly what's going to happen with AI here. And it will also have a way of leveling out a lot of the tourism related problems, because one of the things, ironically, that tourists, including myself, don't like is over tourism. There's nothing worse than being in high season somewhere where it's hot. All the good restaurants are closed, but the terrible restaurants are open, but they're ridiculously overpriced, and you're just fighting for breathing room with other tourists. Yeah, that's what tourists don't want. But there's an easy solution. You can go to AI and ask, tell me a spot that's not overcrowded. Where should I go? So I expect, for example, that Scotland, Ireland, Scandinavia, Poland, Germany, the Baltics will see a lot increased tourism if we talk just about Europe.
Very interesting. Back to the running then. What's a lesson from running marathons that has genuinely changed how you approach your leadership at Hostaway?
I think I read a book called "What I Talk About When I Talk About Running," and it was about a guy who runs marathons for a living, and then he goes and talks about it to people who want to pay him to talk about it. It's quite a funny setup, but he said two things that really changed the way I think about the world. One is, he said, nobody ever wakes up in the morning and think, oh, I'm going to go for a run. It's going to be great. No, every morning you wake up and you think, oh, I did promise myself I was going to go for a run, but I'll just have a coffee and lie in bed instead. That's what going to work is like. Nobody wakes up thinking, oh, this is the most exciting thing ever that happened. No, but then you do it and you get the results and you get the outcome. The other thing I learned from that book is that the pain is inevitable. So you shouldn't aim to run so that you don't have any pain. It's more running and learning how to manage the pain. And I think the same goes very much for businesses. If there is no pain, that means that you're just standing still. If nothing breaks, if nothing fails, you're doing it wrong. You need to push as hard until things start breaking. And that's not a bad thing. You need to learn how to react, what to do when things break. You shouldn't push so hard that everyone burns out and the business crashes and burn, but you should constantly be pushing so hard that you break these little things so that you can find out, are you getting close enough to the sun?
Exactly. It's like going to the gym, isn't it? And if you want to bulk up and stuff, you've got to break your muscles before they start growing. Very similar for the business side of things as well. Finally, then, Marcus, what's the next marathon on your calendar, and what's the next marathon for Hostaway?
I think for me, I'm gonna take a taxi across the bridge and do Miami. It's a challenging running city. The incredible heat. There's no shade. Most buildings are very low. There's a cluster of skyscrapers downtown. There's no water fountains. There's plenty of very, very aggressive dogs. That's my pet peeve when running, is the people who they have a fence that's this high and then a massive dog in their front yard. And when you run by, they don't care if you walk or drive, but if you run, they're going to start barking and they'll jump up. And sometimes they're out on the street. It's quite scary. So that's a massive challenge for me. Next marathon for Hostaway, I think it will be all related to AI. I think we're going to be the one to crack this game and see what AI can do for property managers. And we're experimenting a lot right now.
Interesting times. Marcus, it's been a real pleasure. Thanks for joining us on the Host Planet podcast.
Thank you very much for having me.
Great to chat to Marcus Rader there from Hostaway. I hope you found that episode enlightening. That's just about it for today's show. Remember, this podcast is brought to you in collaboration with Hostfully, which is trusted by short-term rental professionals across the globe. As a Host Planet listener, you get 2 exclusive offers: $500 off onboarding for Hostfully's property management software. Just use the code PLANET500, and 30% off digital guidebooks for life. Use the code HostPlanetGB. To grab these deals, click the link in the show notes or head to hostfully.com. For more free education tips and trends from the STR industry, visit houseplanet.club, where you can sign up for our newsletter, listen to our podcasts, and download a suite of ebooks for hosts and property managers. That's it for today's episode. Until next time, happy hosting.